friends. I'm so happy you could be here with me today. My name's Kayla. I'm one of the registered dietitian nutritionists at San Antonio Regional Hospital. Today we are going to make a healthy, delicious, nutritious meal that you can have for lunch or dinner on a nice hot day, Cashew Soba noodle salad. It's good at room temperature and it's also good chilled, and you can easily pack it up and put it in your lunch for another day. So the main ingredients in this dish is soba noodles. Soba is actually Japanese for buckwheat. So they're a buckwheat noodle, but they also put some wheat flour in it because the wheat flour has gluten, so they don't stick as much. So this is an example of what it looks like in the grocery store. It comes in 3 little packets. And so we're just going to use about 1.5 of these packets. Here, I'll open it up so I can show you. They come in bundles. Here's our soba noodle bundle. Doo-doo-doo. So we're going to use about 1.5 in our recipe today. They cook really fast, like 3 to 4 minutes. So you want to keep an eye on it when you're boiling it. And then you're going to rinse it and drain it and set those aside because we're going to put it in our salad. You can also get other brands. Just check the label. This one actually has salt as one of the ingredients, so it's super salty. It's even saltier than soy sauce. So you want to make sure you check your food labels to make sure there's no hidden ingredients that you don't want. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prep all of our vegetables. This recipe is great because it's really flavorful, but it's a good way to sneak in lots of vegetables in lots of different colors. So each of the colors in our vegetables is going to give us different vitamins and minerals to help our bodies be nice and healthy. So the first vegetable we're going to work on is our sugar snap peas. These are awesome. I love dipping these in hummus or in ranch dip. So all you have to do is you take your sugar snap peas. They look like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the little ends off of each one and maybe cut it into 2 or 3 pieces. Make them bite size, whatever size you like the best. Sometimes these sugar snap peas have little strings in them, so you just want to pull the string out if you happen to come across one. This one I'm just going to cut in half. This one's a little longer, so I might cut it into 3 pieces. Again, I'm just cutting the tips off and cutting it into bite-sized pieces until you have 1 cup of sugar snap peas. Next is going to be our red bell pepper. You could use any color bell pepper that you like. The red just looks really pretty in this dish. And so the way that I like to cut my red bell peppers is to actually cut the sides off. And you'll see that there's all of these seeds in our red bell pepper. And we don't want to eat those. So by cutting off the sides, it's a good way to kind of leave that center part without getting all of those seeds. And then we'll take it out. So here's our seed pod, and we'll get rid of that. Maybe save it to make a veggie broth another time. And so now with our bell pepper, we just want to cut out any of these little membranes that you see on the inside. These can be a little bit chewy. So I'm going to cut that out. And then what we're going to do is I like to stack them up so that you can do half the amount of work. And you always want to make sure to make a claw when you're cutting. And then cutting as thinly as you can into little strips. Bell peppers are great for snacking on too. Until you cut through all of your bell pepper and you get these lovely little strips. Pretty, aren't they? So I already have some here. It makes about a cup when you cut up your entire bell pepper. Just going to push that to the side. The other vegetables in this dish are going to be carrots. I had a little trick for this one. I'm using shredded carrots. So instead of cutting and trying to chop my carrots into little matchsticks, I got these shredded carrots at the grocery store, and they're already like bite-sized for us. These nice little shreds. They're going to add a lot of extra color and crunch into our soba noodle salad. We need about 1 cup. Something else you could do is you could buy the baby carrots and maybe cut them into 4 pieces. One of my dietitian friends says she does that. And then lastly, edamame. So we have 1 cup of edamame. This is also known as the soybean. And so this has a lot of extra protein and fiber that's going to help to keep us full and keep us feeling fueled until our next meal. Edamame comes in these little pods. You might recognize these from when you go to a restaurant to eat sushi. You could buy the edamame in the pods, but it's gonna take a while to squeeze each of these little pods to get the edamame bean out. So this is what they look like when you squeeze them out, and this pod is not edible. So instead, what I did is I bought the already shelled edamame in the frozen food section at the grocery store, and it makes it really easy. So you just want to pop these in the microwave for maybe 2 minutes to get them defrosted and warm them all the way through, or you can defrost in your refrigerator. So can you believe it? We have 4 cups of vegetables already ready to go into our soba noodle salad. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna go ahead and clean up this, and we're gonna get out all of our ingredients to start making our dressing. So now we are ready to make our cashew ginger sauce. So we're gonna start with our cashew butter. This one was actually on sale at the grocery store, and I was like, A+ for me. Cashew butter is gonna be a little bit more mild in flavor than like a peanut butter. I like to use sunflower seed butter at home just to change it up. I had a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when I was in school. So I've got my cashew butter. You wanna make sure you get the creamy one. This is gonna be the base of our sauce, and we don't want a bunch of like lumps and clumps in there. You could also use a blender if you wanted this to be super creamy and smooth. So we're gonna do 1/3 of a cup, and a trick that I like to do is use a little bit of cooking spray in our cup, just so that it doesn't stick as much. So we're gonna go ahead and go in here and get our cashew butter out. We're doing 1/3 cup. So I'll just pour it in. Sometimes when you buy these natural nut butters, there's a little layer of oil on top. So what I do is when I'm storing it before I open it, I store it upside down with the cap on, of course, like this. And that kind of helps the oil come up to the top so that when you're ready to open it, it's easier to stir it all in. So we've got 1/3 cup of our cashew butter going in the bowl now. If you don't have cashew butter, it's totally okay to use peanut butter as long as you're not allergic to them, of course. So we've got 1/3 of our cashew butter in our bowl. Next, we're gonna be adding all of our flavor components. So first, we're gonna be doing our reduced sodium soy sauce. When you see something on the label say reduced, that means that it has 25% less of a certain component. In this case, it has 25% less sodium or salt than the regular version. So this is gonna add our salty component, a little bit of flavor. We're adding 2 tablespoons here. So here's 1 tablespoon and 2 tablespoons. Perfecto. So we've got our soy sauce in, that's gonna be our salty component. Next we're gonna add our sweet component, which is gonna be our maple syrup. You could also use honey or agave or just leave out the sweetener. This just adds a little extra sweet dimension. We're putting 1 tablespoon in today. And the darker the syrup, the more flavor there's gonna be in our maple syrup. So we've got 1 tablespoon of the maple syrup in. And next we're gonna add in some sesame oil. This adds a ton of flavor to our sauce. But a little bit goes a long way. We're only gonna add 1 teaspoon of the sesame oil. And just make sure that when you get this sesame oil, to get the one that says toasted sesame oil, there's a lot of flavor in the toasted one. When we toast something, the heat brings out a lot of the flavor. If you got just the plain sesame oil, there's not as much flavor in that. So make sure you look for the word toasted. And then next we're gonna add in 1/2 of a lime. Oh, and make sure you put this in the refrigerator because there's fat in it, and the fat can go bad if you just leave it at room temperature. Don't make the same mistake that I did. So with our lime, we want to just give it a little squeeze. That helps the little pulp inside to break so that it's easier to juice our lime. So we need about 1 tablespoon of this. Let me just cut it in half. So 1 tablespoon is about 1/2 of a lime. So I'm just gonna squeeze it in, feeling like a chef now. That's just gonna add a little bit of citrus, kind of freshen up the sauce a little bit and add a lot of good flavor. If you like things to be a little bit more citrusy, of course you could add more lime than that. So we've got our lime in, and next we're gonna add in our garlic. So I have 1 clove of garlic. Again, if you like things to be a little garlickier, add more. If you don't like garlic, add less. We've got our bulb of garlic here. We're just using 1 clove. And so you have to peel garlic before you eat it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the end off here and cut the tip, and that makes it easier to cut the garlic. So I'm just cutting off one end, and then I'm gonna cut the other end off. And then I'm gonna kind of just cut along the edge here, just so that that peel can come off a little bit easier. And we have our peeled garlic. And I'm going to use my handy dandy garlic press. If you don't have one, of course, you could chop up your garlic really fine. So I can just stick my clove of garlic in and smash it right in to our recipe. I like to flip it over, and just so I can make sure I get every little bit out. We'll try again. We got a little more. There we go. Now we're gonna add in some ginger. Ginger adds a nice like spicy component to this, and it really is one of the stars of the dressing. And so this is what ginger looks like when it's fresh. It's better to use the fresh if you can, because it gives that extra bite. And so if you get a really fresh ginger, you can actually peel it with like the back of a spoon. So I'm just gonna kind of go in here and peel our ginger. It's really easy to just peel it, or you can use a vegetable peeler if you have one to peel it, but we don't want to eat that peel. It can be a little bit tough and papery. And so I've got it peeled, and now I'm going to take a microplane grater and just go ahead and grate our ginger. Right here, we need about 1 teaspoon. And so I'm just going to grate. It's starting to go into our dressing bowl. A little bit more here. And you can see it all collects on the back of our microplane grater. And I've already grated a little bit, so I'm gonna just go ahead and scoop it all in so we get all of our fresh ginger in there, and it really smells delicious. If you had extra ginger, something else that you could do is use your extra ginger to make tea. All you need to do is put some slices of fresh ginger and some hot water, and you have homemade ginger tea. So we've got all of our components into our bowl, and now we're going to give it a stir, and you'll notice that when we're stirring it up, it doesn't really combine very well. It's kind of stringy with the cashew butter, and so that's why we're going to add a little bit of hot water. The hot water is going to help to melt everything together, so don't be alarmed if this is what yours looks like. It's going to be okay. So we're just going to slowly add in a 1/4 cup of water, a little bit at a time, and as we stir, it's going to become more of a creamy dressing. And like I said earlier, if you're really afraid of having a little bit of tiny little chunks in there, you could always use a food processor or a blender to help make sure that your dressing is extra smooth. So I like to put a whole 1/4 cup of water in, and we'll just stir it up, and it makes a beautiful dressing for our recipe. So our dressing is complete, and I'm gonna get my cooked soba noodles that have been rinsed and drained so that we can put all of our components together. So before we put everything together, I'm just gonna show you what we're gonna do for some of our garnishes. We're gonna add in some cilantro to add a little bit of freshness and actually a lot of flavor to our dish. So this is our cilantro plant. You can get it at the grocery store in the fresh produce section, and it comes in like a bundle. So I'm gonna treat it like flowers. So what I like to do is I like to put the bundle into like a jar or a cup with a little bit of water just to cover the very bottom. What I did is I trimmed the very bottom just like you would with flowers and put it in the jar here, and it helps to keep our cilantro fresh longer. And you can actually take this bag that it comes in and put it over it, so it makes your own little cilantro plant that you can keep in the refrigerator to keep it fresh so that you can continue to use it for longer without it going bad. And so I'm just gonna break off a good bundle of the cilantro and chop it up. We have all of our cilantro here, and what I like to do is kind of roll it up into a burrito. It makes it easier to cut it up so that it's not gonna roam away from us, and make sure you avoid those fingers. I'm gonna do kind of a rough chop to start, and then I'm gonna go back and make another burrito and chop it again. But we always want to protect our fingers and keep those safe. So I'm going to go through again and just with rocking motions, cut through our cilantro. You can even be hands-free and just let your knife do all of the work for you. And that looks pretty good to me. We just don't want to have any whole leaves in our finished product, but if you like whole leaves, you want to leave them whole, then go ahead and you do you. So our cilantro is ready, and we also have a 1/4 cup of roasted salted cashews. And these are going to add a little bit of crunch to our final product. I like to chop them up a little bit. So you just do the same thing, kind of crunch them up with your knife so that they're in smaller pieces. Nuts are a good source of fiber and protein for you. You just have to make sure that you monitor your portion sizes of nuts, because since they have some fat in them, their calorie content can be pretty high. They provide a lot of energy for how small they are. And so just be mindful of your portion when it comes to nuts. We're going to use a 1/4 cup today in our recipe, and of course you could always add more as garnish, but it's going to add a nice crunch to our dish. That looks pretty good to me. All of our ingredients are prepped, and we are ready to put everything together to make our cashew soba noodle salad. Having everything prepped ahead of time makes it easy to throw everything into the bowl so that we can have a nice, delicious meal. So here's our soba noodles. They're nice and cooked. You want to make sure that you only cook them for like 4 or 5 minutes. Otherwise they'll become mushy, and that's not good. We want them to be just the right texture so that they stay sturdy in our salad and don't fall apart, but not crunchy. So I'm going to start by putting our noodles into the bowl. Again, we used about half a package of the soba noodles. And now we're going to add in our carrots. And I just wanted to mention that I pulled a little bit of each of the ingredients aside so that we can top our dish when we're finished, so that it can look extra lovely, because we're special and we deserve to have food that looks delicious. So we have our carrots in the bowl. I'm going to add in my sugar snap peas. We've got our edamame. And we've got our bell pepper. We used a red bell pepper, remember? And then I'm going to reserve the cashews and the cilantro until we've mixed this up a little bit first, because I like to put that on top just because it looks extra lovely and I don't want it to sink down into the bottom. So you could use as much dressing as you like. I like my food pretty saucy, so I'm going to go ahead and just add the whole thing in. And I'm going to give it a nice gentle toss. Our goal here is just so that everything can get combined. And you'll see that as we're tossing it up, the peanut sauce and everything mixing together kind of mutes some of the vibrance of how pretty all of those vegetables look. Can I just mention that it smells really good? I can really smell the ginger from the sauce, a little bit of the garlic. Adding that hot water to thin the sauce not only thinned the sauce, but it helped to make some of those flavors and smells come out, so it's really fragrant. So we've got everything mixed together. Looks great. And now I'm going to add in our toppings with nice clean hands, adding our cilantro in. I'm going to give it just a quick toss here. And then our chopped up cashews. So all of our ingredients are now in our salad. I'm going to give just a quick little stir. I'm going to dish myself up some, and we'll come back for a taste test. Our cashew soba noodle salad is complete. Look at that. It's so beautiful, and it's full of vegetables and healthy ingredients. We have 4 cups of vegetables that we used in our salad. We also have the whole grains from the soba noodles, some healthy fats from the cashews. I think I'll take a taste. It really smells delicious. Make sure to get lots of those vegetables in there, a little bit of everything. I've outdone myself. Really good. I'm so glad that you were able to join me today for this episode of Cooking with Kayla. I'll see you next time, and remember, be gentle with yourself.